very good day. Hope you all are doing well. This is Rahat Fatima, O levels biology teacher. In this lesson, we'll be talking about what basically cells are. You are actually looking at the video regarding O levels biology. So let's begin. So in this lesson, we will be exploring what basically cells are, why the cells are important, what cells make up, its structure, what is there actually inside a cell and its function. So let's begin. All living organisms around in the world, either we can see it or we cannot see it, either plants, animals, fungi, or bacteria, these all are made up of cells. Let me just take you towards an example of a building. How do we have a building or how do we make a building? We make up a building by the help of a building block. So when we have lot of bricks together, we have a building, right? Similarly, when we have a lot of cells together, we have a living organisms. So if I talk about a human or a plant or an animal, it means that billions and trillions of cells join together to form a living organisms. So what happens inside the cell? A lot of chemical reactions go inside the cells, and that defines what a living organism actually do. Now the question arises, how did we come to know or how we can see cells? So many years ago, a scientist named as Robert Brown actually observed cells using a microscope. So what is a microscope? It is actually a device or an apparatus used in the laboratories to view things which we cannot see through our naked eyes. So for looking at cells, bacteria, the scientists usually use microscope in the laboratories to see things which we cannot see with our naked eyes. So we will have a lesson about it in the next session where we will understand what or how basically a microscope is being developed or built. So it is actually made up of a lot of lenses which actually magnifies things for us, and we can see things which we are not able to see with our normal eyes. So let's move on. So there are different okay. So there are different types of microscope. So we have a light microscope and we have an electron microscope. Let me just refer to you again why we use microscope. We use microscope to see things which we cannot see through our naked eyes. So everything around us is not as clean as it is. There are a lot of things which we have around us which we cannot see through our naked eyes. So to see it, we need an apparatus which can actually magnify things for us, make smaller things bigger for us, and for that purpose we use microscope. So you can from the word itself understand micro means small and scope means to see. So we can see cells or study cells or see it through a microscope. So now we have different types of microscope. We have a light microscope and we have an electron microscope. In the light microscope, we use light as a source which will be passing through the material or the specimen or the thing which we are actually going to look into the microscope for us to see. So we use light in this, and the electron microscope, from the name itself, we understand that we use electron beam to view things. So we'll have a detailed understanding of what basically these kind of microscopes are in the next session. Right. So let's have a look at a plant cell to see what is there inside it. So let's suppose we have taken a leaf and we have cut up slice of it, and we're actually observing it in a microscope and we see this kind of a structure. So longitudinal cut, we can cut a specimen or our sample in two ways, either as a longitudinal way and either a transverse way. So in the longitudinal section, how do we cut it? We cut along the axis in a vertical way. And if I talk about a transverse section, we cut it in a horizontal way at a right angle to the longitudinal. So I hope this is clear to you. So what is a cell composed of? So let's talk about an animal cell. In any animal cell, the cell is basically composed of a living material known as the protoplasm, And the protoplasm is made up of three things: the cell membrane, the cytoplasm, and the nucleus. So, if you talk about the cell membrane, let's take an example of the house. So, around the house, there is a boundary, and that boundary regulates, or that door regulates who is going to come in and who's going to go out, right? So similarly, the cell membrane of the cell regulates what's going to come inside the cell and what's going to go out, right? Then we have a cytoplasm, which is going to be the jelly like substance, the liquid substance in which everything inside the cell floats in. And in the center, we have the nucleus, which has the genetic material of the cell, which defines, which gives the instructions to the cell what is to be done, what is not to be done. So, now let's have a detailed understanding of what basically the cell membrane is. So, as I told you before, like the house has a gate which regulates who's going to come in and out. Similarly, the cell surface membrane is kind of a door to the cell, which actually regulates what's going to come inside the cell and what's going to go out. Secondly, it is partially permeable. What do you understand by the word permeable? Permeable means something which has pores inside, through which something can go in and out. So partially permeable means that it has some holes in it, few holes in it, which will allow things to come in and go out. So it actually, if I conclude, it actually controls what substances are going to enter the cell and what substances are going to leave the cell. Let's move on to the next part. The cytoplasm, as I told you before, it is actually the jelly like substance, a liquid in which all of the organelles, the structures inside the cell, we call it organelles, right? So all the small structures inside the cell, any cell, is are known as the organelle. So this is the medium in which all the organelles lie, and all the activities of the cells happen inside this cytoplasm. Either it's a chemical reaction or anything which is going to happen inside the cell happens inside the cytoplasm. Next, we have the nucleus. The nucleus, it's a actually consists of a small round denser protoplasm called the nucleoplasm. It's actually the nucleus is actually a kind of a area inside the cytoplasm which has some structures, and these are denser, and the materials inside this nucleus is nothing but the genetic material, which is known as the chromatin, that tells what the cell is responsible for doing. So, if I talk about our cells like humans, so our body is made up of cells. So, these cells have a nucleus which has our DNA, which defines how we're going to look as, how we're going to behave as, what our gender is going to be. So, that's all defined by the nucleus, chromosomes, or the DNA inside our nucleus. So I just specified the words, the chromosomes. So I'm just going to specify it in detail over here. This is going to be our nucleus. In this nucleus, we have a denser part here that has our genetic material. That's known as the That's known as the chromatins, basically. Around the nucleus, we have a covering, a compartment, a room, a layer, door, or walls, which separates the other organelles of the cell from the nucleus, that we call as a nuclear envelope, right? And the liquid inside this nucleus is known as the nucleoplasm, and the center part where most of the substance inside the nucleus is concentrated, we call it the nucleolus, and the material inside it, we call it chromatin, right? So let's move forward. So what basically chromatins are? Chromatin is nothing but the genetic material of a cell. So these thread-like structures inside, which are known as the chromatins, this is a network of thread-like structures that controls the cell activity, like cell division. So whatever is gonna happen inside the cell, it's controlled by the chromatin. So let me just give you an example. For example, if a cell is responsible in a plant, for example, or so let's take an example of a human cell. So if a cell in our eye is responsible for showing us a vision, so those cells have this DNA inside which will tell the cell to do set activities, like for example secrete water or give an eye a brown color. So whatever information the cell has to, the eye has to portray, all that information is being secured inside the chromatins. All right. So after that, we need to know what is this chromatin made up of. So this chromatin is basically made up of, I just specified this before, DNA, which is known as the deoxyribonucleic acid, which carries all the hereditary information. What do I mean by the word hereditary information? It means that an information which we are carrying from our parents. Hereditary is, we get this information from our parents, and our parents get that, and that information from their parents, and we will be passing it on to our kids as well. So chromatin threads condense into chromosomes when the cell is dividing. So whenever the cell is dividing, so these thread-like structures will coil up together and will form this kind of a structure known as a chromosome. So let's clarify this first. So before cell division, this is normally available as a thread. But when the cell is going to divide, these threads will coil up and will form chromosomes. Now let's move on. We'll have a detailed understanding about it in the further lessons. What's cell wall? Okay, around the cell membrane of the plant cell. So I just specified, let's recall, we talked about cell membrane, we talked about cytoplasm, and we talked about the nucleus. Now we're going to talk about the cell wall. So I also specified this to you that the cells are present in both the animals and the plant, but not both the cells are the same. Not both the plant and the animal cells are the same. There are some things which are available in the plant cells but are not present inside the animal cell. And an example of such a structure is said to be the cell wall. So plant cells have cell wall, but animal cells do not have it. So if we talk about cell, so in an animal cell we have a cell membrane, right? But we do not have a cell wall. But in a plant cell, if I talk about a plant cell, so the plant cell will have a cell membrane, but will also have a cell wall around it. So outside the cell membrane, there will always be a cell wall, right? So what is the function of the cell wall? Cell wall actually gives the plant cells a support, a shape, right? It actually gives the capability of, protecting itself from any injuries. This cell wall in the plant cell is made up of cellulose, and this protects the cells from injuries and gives the cell a regular shape. I specified to you before that the cell membrane is partially permeable, but the cell wall is fully permeable. What do I mean by that? It means that the cell wall of a plant cell is having lot of holes inside it, and anything can go in and can come out of it, right? If you talk about the cell membrane, only few things were able to enter inside the cell, right? So if you talk about the plant cell, everything will come inside through the cell wall, but when it comes near the cell membrane, only few things will go in. Only those things with this which the cell membrane will allow will go inside. Rest will be left outside. So I hope this makes sense to everybody. Let's move on. So here is a detailed understanding about what basically the parts of the cytoplasm are. So we talked about the cell membrane, which is the outermost layer in the animal cell, right? And in the animal cell, basically, we have a nucleus. We also have a nucleus in the plant cell as well. We have a cell wall in the plant cell, but we do not have it in the animal cell. Okay, so another organelle which is present inside the animal and the plant cell in both the cell is the mitochondria. So mitochondria is said to be the powerhouse of the cell. It is the place where all the energy, all the power is secreted, which gives the cells the energy, the power to perform something, right? So it is the place where all of the energy is being created, and this is how a mitochondria looks like. Now we have chloroplast. So chloroplasts are normally present inside the plant cell. These are not present inside the animal cell. These are only present inside the plant cell. And chloroplasts are green in color, right? You may be studying since your lower levels that plants do photosynthesis during the day and respiration during the night. So, for the process of photosynthesis, we need chloroplast. So, these chloroplasts are responsible for the process of photosynthesis. This is the place where the process of photosynthesis takes place, right? And it has a pigment, an ink known as the chlorophyll, which defines the green color of the plant. So let me just clarify this to you. I just specified mitochondria to you. So the respiration happens inside the mitochondria because that's the place where the power of the cell is being generated. So if you talk about what basically respiration is actually making of energy to do something, to do work, right? So respiration takes place inside the mitochondria, whereas photosynthesis takes place inside the chloroplast in the cell, in the plant cell. So both the plant and the animal cell has mitochondria, has nucleus, has cell membrane, right? But we studied that the plant cells have cell wall, has chloroplast, has nucleus, has cell membrane, but does not have but the animal cells do not have chloroplast, right? So be very clear with this. Now let's move on to the next organelle, which is known as the vacuoles. So even plant cells have vacuole, but animal cells have smaller vacuoles. Plant cells have bigger vacuoles, animal cells have smaller vacuoles. So if you talk about it at your home, you have fridge. That's the place where you keep the extra food, the extra stuff you have which is left out, right? So similarly, in your animal and the plant cells, you need to have some storing places, the storing compartment, the storing room where you can keep all the extra chemicals you have. So in the plant cells, you have a larger vacuum, but in the animal cells, you have small vacuums. This is the place where you have where you can store your extra material. Now let's have a look at the differences between the plant and the animal cell. So we have cell wall in the plant, but we do not have cell wall in the animal. We have chloroplast in the plant cell, but we do not have chloroplast in the animal cell. We have centrioles we don't have centrioles in the plant cell. We'll talk about this later what basically centrioles are. But centrioles are present in the animal cells. We have a large vacuole in the plant cells, but we have smaller vacuoles, numerous but smaller vacuole inside the animal cell. In plants, there is only one large, but in animal, there are many small. Now there are different types of cells, and each and every cell has a different, task or function to perform. They are specialized for a certain purpose. So we'll talk about some examples of specialized cells. One of it is red blood cells. These cells are responsible for carrying oxygen to all parts of the body, and this is what gives the blood the red color. It contains a chemical known as the hemoglobin, which binds to the oxygen and takes it to all parts of the body. So this cell has no nucleus, it is a disc shaped, and because it has hemoglobin, it is red in color, right? It has no nucleus, so it has short life and dies, it dies out and it needs to be replaced. And that's why we need to have good consumption of iron so that we have a good composition of hemoglobin in our red blood cells. So when we have lot of iron, lot of red blood cells are being produced, and when we have a lot of red blood cells, so we have more hemoglobin to bind with the oxygen, and so we have good supply of oxygen to all parts of our body. So it is in a biconcave disc shape. This allows the red blood cells to have a large surface area, which will allow faster diffusion of oxygen into the cell, and so the oxygen will be supplied to all parts of the body much quicker. Next, an example of a specialized cell from the plants is the root hair cells. These cells are responsible for uptake of the water from the roots. So if you talk about the plants, so plants absorb water from the roots. So these are long and narrow, hair-like structure, which gives it a large surface area. So the lot of waters and minerals are being absorbed from the roots. So now let's talk about how the system or how an organism works. So first of all, we have cells. Lots of similar cells, like same types of cells, join together to form tissues. Lots of similar type of tissues join together to form an organ, and lots of organs work together to form an organ system. And when we have lot of organ system, we have an organisms. So if we talk about, let's suppose we have 7 organ systems. We have a circulatory system, we have a respiratory system. So if we talk about circulatory system, it is composed of basically our heart. So our heart is formed of many tissues. So you talk about, we have cardiac tissues, we have, let's suppose, different valves inside the hearts. So these tissues are made up of cells. So lots of cells make up a tissue. Lots of similar tissues work together to form an organ. Lot of organs work together to form an organ system. And then we have lot of organ systems together, like we have a excretory system, respiratory system, we have an organism as a whole. So here we have some examples of organs. So when we have a lot of tissues, similar tissues working together, we have an organ. Let's suppose we have brain, we have heart, we have kidneys. For plants, we have leaves, flower. If we talk about the organ systems, we have digestive system, respiratory system, we have excretory system, we have nervous system. If we talk about the organ system in the plants, we have shoot system, which is the upper part of the plant above the soil, and root system is the part of the plant which is below the soil, which is composed of the roots. So, summarizing things out, what we have studied in today's lesson, we talked about the cells, how we can see it, its structures, organisms inside it. We differentiated between the plant and the animal cells. We talked about the specialized cells, let's suppose the red blood cells, the root hair cells, and we talked about the composition or the organization of an organism. We learned that cells make up tissues, similar tissues make up organs, different organs make up organ system, and organ system makes an organism as a whole in both terms of plants and animals. So I hope everything is clear to you. Have a great day. Take care. Love is.